Hi, I'd like to welcome you to week 3 of the St. Aidan's Institute course on holy living. This is a very intense week, as they all are, and you're kind of having a disservice done to you. With the first question, the four people you have to choose from to look at, Thomas Cranmer, Ignatius of Loyola, Teresa of Avila, or John of the Cross, each one of them deserves an entire course on their own. Each one of them is somebody that you really should read their stuff and grapple with it over a very long period of time, because each one plumbs the depths of Christian life in a way that is just so profound. The words of Cranmer in the prayer book, words that we all know by heart and all use and hear regularly, that are so meaningful and so filled with the holiness of God. And Cranmer is somebody the average Anglican doesn't really know much about. Teresa of Avila, a woman I have read for quite a number of years, and some of her imagery is just so deep and powerful and shaping. Ignatius of Loyola, in terms of the spiritual and the mystical element, Ignatius of Loyola, for a very different reason, in terms of his intense process of consciousness examine, and the discipline of the Jesuits, the order he founded, an order that helped me find my faith when I attended a Jesuit high school, and an order that shaped me as a scholar in doing my PhD at a Jesuit university. I owe a lot to Ignatius, though he was one of the leaders of the Counter-Reformation, go figure. These are very important people and very significant in the history of the Christian faith. So really grapple with what they're saying and know that these are people you need to spend many years getting to know in the time to come, each one in their own way. So we're doing them a disservice by making you choose only one this week, but that is what it is. The second question is a little bit tougher, and one that we really want to be mindful of, especially in the day and time we live in. You still hear an awful lot of talk about the Enlightenment and Enlightenment thinking, also known as modernity. The Enlightenment model emerged in the 1600s. The goal was to take the lessons being learned in the scientific revolution that was all the rage at the time and apply them to humanistic studies and take the same intellectual rigor or academic discipline that you would use in chemistry and apply it to theology or apply it to psychology. Underlying the Enlightenment were a couple of very important foundations. One was a belief in the perfectibility of man through his own means, meaning that we no longer needed God to find paradise. We no longer needed revelation to come true in order to have a restoration of the Garden of Eden. Instead, the belief was that the inevitability of human technological progress would lead us to paradise, would build a perfect world. Believe it or not, the original Star Trek series on TV really reflected Enlightenment thinking in terms of humanity overcoming its materialism, overcoming its need for wealth and power and success, and kind of living in this wonderful egalitarian federation, wanting to share that with the rest of the universe. So that one of the pillars of the Enlightenment is the perfectibility of humanity through its own means. Another one was this sense of inevitability, that progress was always going to go forward. Progress was always going to make things better. Everything we did was good. When it came time to conduct research on something, and the moral debate was, well, should we do this? The answer was always yes. If we can do it, we should do it. And we're actually at the limits of that now. Should we do human cloning? Enlightenment thinkers are saying, yes, we should do it because we can. Should we undertake genetic mutation experiments? Enlightenment people would say yes, because it's always going to get better. It's always going to be more meaningful. In Europe, the Enlightenment ended at the end of World War I. Modernism ended at the end of World War I. When they look back on the first war that used technology for the sake of killing on an industrial scale, the technology of chemistry and poison gas, the technology of aeronautics and being the first war to use aircraft as a weapon, submarines, tanks, all these other weapons that had never been seen, the machine gun, all these things that had never been seen before on a large scale. It rocked Europe to its core, but they never had time to really grapple with it because before the progress in the critique of the Enlightenment could really get very far, World War II erupted. In the United States, it is believed that the Enlightenment ended on August 6, 1945, with the dropping of the first atomic bomb. Because now, in Europe and in the United States, there came to be this understanding that progress is not inevitable. We could actually do more damage with our technology than good. We could do more destruction than creation. And then with the rise of an understanding of pollution and environmental degradation and all that stuff, it became clearer and clearer that the inevitability of progress that was a foundation stone of the Enlightenment was not at all true. And the rise of the Cold War and the idea of mutually assured destruction, MAD, really set in stone this idea that we are not guaranteed to always move forward. So the question became, okay, well, what then do we do? If modernism isn't going to work, what comes next? And lacking a better term, we developed the term postmodernism. And that's a term you've probably heard. Postmodernism is a critique of the Enlightenment or modernism more than it is its own system. It's kind of seen as a transitional period. We don't really have a new philosophical undercurrent nowadays that leads us and guides us the way the Enlightenment did. And a couple of the primary critiques of the postmodern movement is one, relative truth. And this is one that drives evangelists crazy. That you may have your truth, I may have my truth. Both truths are equally valid. A great example of the argument of postmodernism, and I forget the source of it was, what the source of it was, but it goes like this. Facts, like wigs for men and the telescope, were an invention of the 16th century. Facts never really existed, it's saying, before the 16th century, and that they were a convenience, just like wigs for men, and that today facts don't really matter or have the meaning they may have once had. They're not as sacrosanct. And that's a very postmodern idea. So postmodernism argues that truth is not absolute, progress is not inevitable, and everything becomes relative. It sees itself, and the comparison has often been made, it sees itself as its Einstein to the Enlightenment Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton's laws of motion were very cut and dry, black and white. His understanding of physics was very straightforward. Einstein completely wrecked it all with the theory of relativity, in that reality only exists based on your perspective, or relative to your perspective. And the great example of it is, if you're traveling at 99.9% the speed of light in a car, and you turn on the headlights, how fast is the light leaving the headlight of your car? If nothing can go faster than the speed of light, and you're already traveling at 99.9% of the speed of light, the answer is the light can only leave your headlight at 0.1% the speed of light. That's what Newton would say. Einstein said no. Einstein said for a motionless observer, it would look that way, that it's moving away from the car at 0.1% the speed of light. But if you're in the car and you're already traveling at 99.9% the speed of light, you will see yourself as motionless, and the light will leave your car at 100% the speed of light. That will mess your brain up. But that's relativity. Everything is relative to the position you hold. And postmodernism argues the same thing. Reality, truth, faith, God, anything you want to understand really only exists relative to your perspective of it. And so because there are many different perspectives, there are many different truths. That raises big questions for us as we wrestle with spiritual development. Is it possible that every Christian can follow their own path? Is there no way to critique anybody on a path that might be fundamentally flawed? It's a really tricky question, especially after last week, where we talked about different meaningful paths, the paths of the scholastics, the mendicants, the mystics. We know there are more than one equally valid path of Christian formation, but how do we judge which paths are right and which are wrong? Postmodernists would argue what's right and wrong is dependent on the perspective of each individual, not upon any absolute sense of truth. So grapple with that. It's incredibly frustrating to deal with postmodernism for evangelists, for preaching, for discipleship, but it's where we are right now as a culture. And so getting a handle on it is essential for us if we're to speak to a younger generation of people. All right, sorry for the long video. I hope this has been instructive for you. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the class. God bless you.